to The Hypnotist, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. Brought to you by the hypnotherapist demanded by celebrities, CEOs, and even royalty, Adam Cox. These recordings took place live from Adam's clinic in London's world-famous Harley Street. So, get yourself comfortable and enjoy today's episode of The Hypnotist.
Welcome to The Hypnotist, and today I am joined by a very special guest hypnotist, Lenora Edwards. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited I get to spend time with you and your listeners.
Yeah, great to have you here. And it's always good bumping into hypnotherapists because there's always an interesting story as to how people get into this wonderful world called hypnosis. So what's your story? How did you end up being a hypnotherapist?
That is so funny that you mentioned that. So at the Mid-America Conference coming up in October, I am sharing the keynote all about how I got into hypnosis. And the title of it is somewhere between crisis and cookies. And the way that I got into hypnosis, and I feel like everybody gets into hypnosis this way. Nobody really sets out from like kindergarten. I want to be an astronaut or a firefighter. I want to do this. I want to do that. Nobody sets out to be a hypnotist or a hypnotherapist. And the way that I came through was through cookies. I had a baking business at the time, in addition to my career as a speech pathologist. And what I was doing was spending a whole lot of time on YouTube. And I was looking for ways to help myself ultimately stop sabotaging myself, finding ways to make money, finding millionaire mindset type things. And then also what was really underneath was I had an eating disorder and I was finding ways to navigate around that. And I did not tell anyone. And I had been struggling with it for over 2 decades and it just got progressively worse and worse. And that's how I ended up finding the wonderful world of hypnosis and hypnotherapy.
So talk me through that, because obviously there's so much information on YouTube, so much information online.
Oh my God.
How did you figure out, like, was it you were a guinea pig and you tested what worked for you? Or is it a case of you discovered something that really resonated and you're like, oh yeah, that's going to help?
Oh my gosh, that is such a great question. There's so much on YouTube. I have spent more hours on YouTube. And if there was a doctoral degree in personal growth and development, I would have absolutely earned it by now. Because ultimately, when it comes to personal growth, I think there are so many things that help. And it's about finding what works for you. And when it comes to hypnosis or finding ways to change habits that we don't like, whether we want to stick to a diet or we want to wake up early or we want to stop criticizing ourselves, there is so many options. And when it comes to hypnosis, I broke definitely all of the warnings that they said, don't throw the biggest problem at this right now. Work with somebody one-on-one to really help anchor in the things that the changes are occurring. And I took all of those rules and recommendations and I tossed them right out the window. I was like, I can figure it out. And in doing so, I definitely turned myself into the guinea pig. And I also found out the very hard way that working with a professional is a very, very helpful approach, especially because they often say you can't be the driver and the passenger at the same time. So when you're learning something new, the beauty with YouTube is that there's so much information. The flaw is that you're not having a conversation with somebody about the things that you're learning. So it's very passive and you're trying to make sense of it on your own. Whereas when you get to have a conversation, whether it's in a group class or if you're working with a practitioner, there's a conversation, there's a back and forth. And that's the difference that makes all the difference.
It's definitely, the metaphor I use is kind of, as hypnotherapists, we're seeing the client in the maze that they're in, but from a different perspective. We get to see it from above. So we might have experienced something similar or worked with other clients that had something similar. So we get to kind of see it from a different perspective. And I think that's helpful because, you know, if you're in the maze, like you might have the right information, but you don't know where to turn, you know, in terms of that. And how did that looking for stuff online transition for you actually becoming a therapist and a speaker and an author.
I completely agree with you about working with a practitioner or a coach or a hypnotherapist. They have a different perspective and they're looking at you in the maze. That is a beautiful, beautiful analogy and picture that you brought up. Can't agree more with that, especially because we don't know what we don't know and we're trying to figure out if it's working while you're in the maze. And when you're with a practitioner or a therapist or a hypnotherapist, they have an embodied perspective. They understand the lingo. They've already walked through that maze working to figure it out. So they know a bit more, so they can absolutely help. When, for me, I always think I took a very backwards way into it. I really, really worked hard at trying to help myself and get myself out of those loops. And I would take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, or I'd have a good week and then I'd have a bad 3 weeks or something like that. When it came to my eating habits, when it came to exercising, when it came to the terrible word of a diet and what that looks like. And it really was trying to figure it out on my own. And what happened as a result of my eating disorder, I ended up back in the dentist chair for another false tooth. So I have multiple false teeth, and that happens as a result of an eating disorder. And when I was sitting in the dentist chair, I kept thinking, this isn't working. You have gone as far as you can, Lenora. How many more dollars do you want to spend? How many more hours do you want to spend trying to do this by yourself? And then it came to, how many more teeth do you need to lose to realize that you're not able to do this alone? And as horrible as a day that was, I started to take a step forward. And my intention was to never, ever tell anybody about the fact that I had an eating disorder, because there's so much shame and there's so much guilt wrapped up into it. And for me, I said, okay, let me take a class. And one of my favorite practitioners at the time they were based on the West Coast and they were actually coming over to the East Coast. And I was so excited because I live on the East Coast and they were coming to a state that was only 5 hours away at the time. And I thought, I can totally write this off as like speech therapy. This could be CEUs. People won't even know about it. And then COVID happened. And I didn't get to actually go to the conference, but thankfully Zoom was there to save the day. And they had started to do hybrids and they had started to host conferences where people who had already signed up, because I had signed up in January and they locked everything down in March, and the conference eventually occurred in November. So I was able to attend on Zoom. And after the 5-day conference on Zoom, working very hard to figure things out, I realized, unfortunately, I still had a ton of problems. The conference didn't resolve what I had initially thought that I was going to resolve, the skills that I thought were going to be at the end of this 5-day conference. And in the last 20 minutes of that conference, the hypnotherapist and the teachers goes, if you still want more help with this, reach out to our clinic. We offer 1-to-1 sessions. And I decided to call and leave a message. And I started to work with a practitioner at the time who was not the one that I initially thought it was, but I worked with their protege, and it was the greatest gift that I ever experienced. And then, so we started to work together. We started to work together about 2 to 3 times, 4 times a month for about 2 sessions at a pop. And I still did not tell this practitioner as to why I was there. And we talked about things like confidence and how to stand up for myself and of what I would consider very surface level topics. And then after 4 months of meeting, I said something off the cuff and they caught it. And I tried to navigate my way around it and they caught it again. And I kept working to get away from the topic and they kept coming back and they would not move. And finally, just a cluster pile came out of me of everything that I had been going through. And at the end of that session, things were completely different because we had such rapport. We had so many other things that had been worked on up until that point. At the end of that session, I felt it completely leave my body, this thing that had been bothering me and irritating me for so long. And it became very apparent that it was like, you need to do this with your life, Lenora. And so I had completely pivoted from that standpoint after that session.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I think it's a wonderful thing, because a lot of hypnotherapists, either through self-hypnosis or finding a good practitioner,
Yeah.
they on the receiving end of just that complete transformation, they feel they've released so much of what they need to release. And then it almost feels like a desire in certain people to like, I want to share this with other people. I want to help other people in this way.
Completely. I personally think, and I feel like you probably would agree with me, that it's the greatest gift that you can share with somebody.
Yeah, because effectively, at its core, hypnotherapy and any kind of therapy, but I think hypnotherapy is more on the therapeutic spectrum of the actual change element rather than just kind of counseling and listening. It's more designed to create a change.
Yeah.
Is that effectively you're taking someone's life that's on a current trajectory, and by an intervention over several sessions, it then takes a different trajectory. And that's what an incredible thing to be able to do for other people. And it feels amazing and fulfilling as well.
Very much.
So how did that go then from you on the receiving end of this to you then saying, no, I'm going to help other people in this way? Did you kind of do a course? You kind of learned about it, or you just dove straight in and thought, right, I'm going to be this therapist?
Well, I had been learning the entire time up from that standpoint, and especially when it gets into anything in the world of, do you remember the movie The Secret?
Rhonda Byrne, I do, yeah.
Okay. So anything in the world of law of attraction or personal growth, I like to affectionately refer to the movie The Secret as the infomercial to personal growth, because it comes across as very sparkly and just visualize, and you're going to be set on your way. But when we start to really notice that change is possible, and that we are the creator of our experience, we are the meaning maker of our experience, we're the one in the trance, we're the one experiencing life in this human form, you start to really get down to the foundation and have a much deeper understanding. And I think there's a lot of different levels that go into it. And I very much think from the standpoint of being able to understand the multiple layers that are going on. I tend to be, and you probably are also that type of person, and most of your listeners, if not all of your listeners, have a deeper understanding of this place that we call Earth and this world of that we get to be a creator. Where we are on that level varies. And so helping people understand that change is possible no matter what they want. If they want to stop being critical inside their head, or if they want to go out and start a business, that is possible. And helping them identify those characteristics of, these are the thoughts that are holding me back from accomplishing that. Thinking I'm not that type of person to do that, and helping them navigate out of that thought process into, I am the type of person, I can be the type of person, sure, I could take one step forward, truly changes their entire life, because they're thinking in a different way. And now they're not looking at a problem, they're looking at a way to navigate around the problem. And that is extraordinarily powerful.
Yeah, it is. It's a wonderful thing to, I feel privileged to be a therapist and kind of help other people, because you know, you're helping other people, but it's also kind of like you can see insights in the clients that you're working with within your own life, and it feels kind of quite generative and helpful from that perspective. Most hypnotherapists gravitate towards either a niche or a specialism. Did your background with, you know, having your eating disorder and some of the things related to that influence the niche that you tend to specialize in?
Very much so. And you had asked, how did I decide to become a coach, and what was that trajectory like? I had been studying all along, and I would think, as I was watching things on YouTube, I'm like, I want to help people. I want to give them that change. I want to do that. And I just didn't know how to do it. So when I noticed I need to do this with my life, oh, okay. So then things start to light up. So I did take certifications, and I did take different courses. And it's one thing to take a course. And one of the techniques that I'm certified in is what is called holographic memory resolution. And it helps people speak in the language of their nervous system. So the nervous system speaks in color, shapes, sizes, textures, and sounds. And when we understand that code, we can really help people, because they'll say, oh, I have that sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. oh, it makes me think of this time. And so we start to get those changes. We can understand that. We can take a class and say, oh, okay, I understand that. But to embody that is completely different. To truly understand the mechanics of what's going on, because you can get a certification at the end of 5 days. Now we want to live it. We want to have it truly be a part of us and identify as that. And in the intent to help other people, that was a transformation. So I started to practice with, at the time, what I would consider early stages of hypnosis, where you start to think, oh, let me practice with my friends, or let me get used to it. You're actually going through an identity shift of navigating from this person who doesn't feel very comfortable in it to embodying this confidence of saying, oh, I can do this. Oh, this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like for this person. And this is what it looks like for me as I'm going through the process. So it really is a full evolution of the person that's wanting to become that hypnotherapist, or the person that's wanting to become that coach or that practitioner, whatever it might be. And you're helping people get change, which is great. When it came to my niche, because I went through what I went through, it was, I often say, you don't know how many rock bottoms there are. And you think you hit rock bottom, and then it turns out there's another 20 levels beneath that really awful place that you were in. And my intention is for other people to realize they don't have to live there. It's not a life sentence. You're stuck in a pattern, and we can absolutely help you out of that pattern or those patterns, depending on how they are. And when it comes to food, it really is connected with so many things in your life. It's connected to birthday parties. It's connected to being alone. It's connected to pleasure. It's connected to so many things. So to have a really good relationship with food and to have a good relationship with your body changes your life entirely. From somebody who would think about food and think about her body easily 90+% of the day. That's a lot of brain power that was consumed by thoughts that really weren't helping anyone, that weren't really living in your body. So when you look out into this world and you think, I can do so many things, there are a number of thoughts that are on repeat. Which ones don't I want to keep? And working with somebody to help get that change is truly life altering. And I often think when it comes to people who are saying, okay, I want change, and they look out and they say, okay, well, where's a hypnotherapist, or where's a coach, where's a practitioner? I consider it a lot like dating. You didn't go out with somebody the first time and think, okay, and I'm off and I'm married. Necessarily. Most people want to see if there's a connection, want to see if there's a rapport. Can I trust this person? And I encourage people, especially if they say therapy didn't work for me or coaching didn't work for me, that's okay. It might not have been that approach. It might have been the person. So keep looking for a person that resonates with you, because your life will be so completely different when you find that person.
And that's the great thing, because so many coaches, hypnotherapists out there, that people get a feeling, I think, and that's why I quite like sharing stuff on kind of Spotify and YouTube and that kind of stuff, because most of my clients, they've already listened to me for hours and hours before they end up working with me.
Yeah.
Because they say, feel comfortable, feel like I can trust them, and that's that element. And I think we're living in a different time, whereas go back 20 years, you wanted to find a therapist or a coach, it might be a directory, and you don't know who they are, you don't know anything about them, and then you're, it feels daunting, I think, to kind of take on that risk, but it's never been easier. And I imagine a lot of people that find out about you, perhaps have seen you doing your TEDx talks. Does that help them to get a feeling of what you're like and whether or not you're suitable for them just from your presence, let's say, online?
I like to think so. I don't know for sure. I imagine that they do. People will sometimes say, oh, I saw you online and I liked what you shared. I often think that it is not necessarily what I share, but how I share. Because a lot of people, especially after I teach a class, they'll come up to me because they can feel the warmth. In a reel, sometimes it's not, you can't really get into that space where you're talking about certain more personal things that you might be talking about when you're in a class, or that you might be talking about in a YouTube video, especially when you're in a class and you have the ability to hear that person go into their stories and how they help that person. People relate completely differently. And what I think is such a beautiful thing is, for me, very specifically, there is no judgment and there is no shame. And I can say that to somebody, but they have to feel it. And that's a different experience when you feel that viscerally. And I think that's why after classes, people really come up to me, and that's where a lot of my clients come from. Or if I've worked with a client and they pass my name along, that's a different story, because now they're taking this trusted person, and this trusted person is passing along my name. Wow, that's a huge compliment. And what a beautiful gift. And they can verify that this person, that when you share these very personal things with them, it's okay. And it makes all the difference. The topics that I talk about, especially when it comes to food or somebody's body or how they feel when somebody's touching them, it is personal and it is personable. And you want to be in a space where it's okay to talk about it, and that person's not going to judge you. That person's not going to shame you. They're not going to criticize you. They're going to see you and they are going to say, it's okay. I'm looking at it with you and you're safe. Huge
I think
viscerally
some
different.
therapists fall into a trap of a false belief system that if they're a therapist or if they're a coach, they have to be this kind of shining perfect example and they've got no flaws. And actually that makes it feel less real, less genuine, less authentic, less vulnerable. And I've noticed with you is that you embrace the vulnerability, you embrace the kind of the opening and kind of the sharing. Is that a deliberate thing to kind of to be open? Is that intentional, or is that just kind of like a reflection of your personality?
For me, I think it's a reflection of my personality, especially because there are things that I had never wanted to share with people. I didn't anticipate standing on a stage, and quite honestly, if you ask anybody I went to graduate school with, they would say, Lenora's a speaker. She was terrible in class. She hated being up there because I really was so uncomfortable. But I want people to know, and the reason that I share the way that I do is, I want people to know that change is possible and that I get it. I've walked it. I know the discomfort in your nervous system and what that looks like. And really, I just want people to feel better. I want them to get the changes they want. If it's with me, great. If not, awesome. Find somebody who works best with you and with your nervous system. And also, when we share, especially when we share vulnerably, it's something that when we're doing it, we need to be able to hold the space for ourselves that says, I'm going to share this this very personal thing about me, and I'm going to be okay. That I'm not having an internal collapse going, what are they going to think of me? What are they going to judge me? Because I used to, absolutely, all the times that I've worked with coaches and all the times that I've worked with practitioners, and I still do. I usually have at least one or two on my roster because I like to improve and I like to keep getting better at whatever it is that I'm getting better at. So when I'm sharing, for example, I had a TEDx coach, and she was such a beautiful teacher, and sadly she's no longer with us. And her name was Holly. And when she was first sharing with me how to stand on the TEDx stage, how to say what I'm going to say, she was the one that was saying, you need to be able to say this and not break when you're saying it. You have to have that stability for yourself. And that was such a huge realization, because I was the one that was judging me. I was the one that was criticizing me. Nobody out there was throwing fruit at me. Nobody was throwing tomatoes saying, get off the stage. I was doing it. And when I can recognize they're not judging me, I'm judging me. Okay, that's my personal work. That's something I have to go clean up. Huge difference of a world.
I think a lot of people do that. They kind of mind read and kind of assume the judgment of an audience. will be a certain way, and there's that kind of fear and kind of reaction. But you've obviously, you speak a lot at the conferences. You've got the keynote at the Mid-America conference. You've done 2 TEDx talks. What would you say is the advice you would give to someone that feels anxious or daunted at the idea of speaking in front of an audience?
The first thing that I wish I had understood at the thought of it, because the thought of it used to make me break out into a sweat, but it really is focus in on yourself and notice what your subconscious is saying. Well, what are they going to think of me? What if they're going to judge me? What if I say the wrong thing? What if I mess up? What if they think I'm stupid? All of those worries are exactly where you want to go first. Because if you feel like you have this really important thing that you want to share and you want other people to know it and you feel it moving through you, and then you go, but what if they're going to think of me? What if they say this? What if they say that? You have this beautiful thing to share. That's great. That's so important. Now do the inside work on this piece so that when you share, you can stand there and go, it doesn't matter what you think. I know for sure that this is helpful. I know that this is going to help somebody. That's where that alignment is.
So almost using your kind of anxieties, worries, thoughts as reconnaissance to kind of say, it's telling you exactly what you need to work on. You work on that and then the emotion changes, which seems obvious, but at the same time, most people will bury that or kind of ignore it and still feel it anyway. That's really interesting. And when you have those kind of thoughts, when you did the work on yourself, what if I mess up? What if they judge me? Did you actually kind of forensically go through each one of those and say, what if they do judge me? Like, what if I do mess up? Almost kind of refute them and kind of lean into them.
Very much so. And I still do. So I'm still doing the work. Absolutely. And it's so funny because every speech or every upcoming event, it pushes me in a different way, in a different level. I really struggled with, what if they think I'm stupid? That was something that I really had to work with for a very long time. And there will still be little things that pop up and go, well, what if you don't remember it? And then they think you're stupid. And it's like, okay, well, now I need to sit down and I have to have this conversation with this worry or with this part, because I love to think of them as messengers. And if I'm finding a way to, no, get away, nope, and trying to ignore it, that's another big sign that, Lenora, you need to pay attention because you're working really hard to not pay attention to this. So I absolutely still do the work. And even in coming into this keynote, it pushed me in a new way because I had a full rundown of what I thought I was going to talk about. And I shared it with one of my coaches and they go, that's good, but you're missing half the crowd in this because this is directed toward a very specific group because it was directed toward the newbies. And so I had to dismantle that entire talk. I had to pretty much take a huge, 80+% of it and throw it out the window, or at least put it on the side and restart again. And now it's going, then, okay, who do you become on the walk to preparing for this? That is absolutely something that I work with. And so when it comes up, and not if, because they often come up, those worries or fears, if or when they come up, I like to sit down with them and say, okay, what's going on? Who's talking? If you could all come together and give me an age and give me an idea of who's talking, let's look at it. Because this is something that I will, I'll teach really quickly. I'll teach you what I affectionately refer to as the shift protocol. And all of my protocols are right there on your hand because I ultimately think you want to gain back your power and your control. So shift as in SHIFT. So the first thing that I do is I spot the thought. So if it's a worry, okay, cool. I spotted it. Hear it. Whose voice is it? And this is so powerful because we want to know, is it our voice or is it an echo of somebody else's voice? Then what we want to do is we want to investigate it. So if it's my voice, okay, cool. Let's put this worry out on the table and get it out in front of me, because when I can get it out in front of me, then I have perspective. Then I have the ability, like you said earlier about the matrix. Okay, now I can look at it and have a better view of it. Then I frame it. is there anybody that might come in and talk to me in a different way? Who else might either agree with this or who might not agree with this? Who might not agree with this thought? Great, we're going to frame it and then we're going to trade it in for a better thought. And that is the shift protocol because, and this is something that I teach all my clients and I teach it in all my classes because it's something that I needed. And I couldn't figure out how to capture those thoughts and work them fast enough. But once I created the protocol, I'm like, oh, now we have a systemized approach to those, annoying thoughts or critical thoughts or whatever they are. And now we can shift them in real time, which makes a huge difference because it's not this worry that's going to hold me down for 3 days. It's this worry that pops up and I get to go, oh, okay, let me look at it really quick. SHIFT. Okay, now we have that emotional release and now we can carry on.
So I imagine, because there's an element of a mnemonic there, it's on your hands, you can kind of, like, I imagine also it becomes like a pattern interrupt as well.
Very
there we
much
go, the
so.
shift
Yes.
protocol.
I'll send it to you so you can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll have a link to that.
Yeah.
But I imagine even just like moving your finger for you has become a positive anchor to access resource states because you already know that you can take an intrusive thought or a worrisome thought and kind of shift that to something more empowering, useful. And I love the bit trading it in because effectively that's a reframe. It's kind of like, well, it's saying this and it has this intention, but actually we could update that for something much more empowering, much more useful, and then you're left with that kind of resourceful feeling. So that's great. I'm gonna definitely use that. It's a very cool thing.
Awesome.
So talk to us about you're at the Mid America conference. You're doing one of the keynotes. Among some amazing, like my kind of inspiration of becoming a hypnotherapist was Richard Bandler, and I just think he does like amazing kind of like nested loops and that kind of storytelling. So it's going to be great to kind of see him there. Tell us about your talk at the Mid America conference.
The way that I approached it was, and I love that he was one of your first teachers. That's awesome, and I'm super excited because I get to see you when we go in a couple of days. For my talk, I really thought about the audience, who's listening, who's in the room, and when they walk away, how do they want to walk away? What do they want to feel? Because we can tell so many stories. We can tell uplifting stories. We can tell heavy stories, and they walk away with deeper insights, but we can also add humor. And I'm speaking on Friday morning. So the setup is right now, Rich Guzzi is speaking, who you got to spend time with last week, which was awesome. That podcast recording is fantastic. So in case anybody wants to go back, it was just a few days ago. And then I believe I'm speaking that morning on Friday morning. And then Chase Hughes is speaking on Sunday, along with Dr. Richard Bandler is also speaking on Sunday. So I really thought about the timing also. The timing is probably around 11 a.m. And how does somebody feel first thing in the morning? But also, where do we want them to be moving at the beginning of a conference? You want them to be uplifted. You want them to be inspired and motivated. So I really paid attention to who's in the room. How do they want to feel? And how can I connect everybody together so that it feels like a family that you want to be a part of? And there's sometimes the reason I specify is because there are plenty of people where we'll say, oh, family. And they're like, I didn't have a very good family experience. But no, this is the one that you want to be a part of. Because we all speak the same language. We're all there for the same reasons. We all love not just learning and growing and helping other people. We also love helping ourselves to a new level and to an expanded level. And I think that's really important. So that's how I started to connect everybody. And I also wanted to share a little bit about how I got into this great, wonderful field that we find ourselves in.
Amazing. So you're going to be sharing your story and I guess setting the scene in a way, because you and Rich are kind of the first, and I guess Chase and Richard will be kind of the bookend of the conference. And
I think it's a really great way that they had it set up too. Which is, it's very different. And so each conference that we go to, it all has its own personality and the things that you can expect. HTL is known for, Hypnothoughts Live is known for summer camp for hypnotists. And I think they did a beautiful job, especially this past year. I got to go this past year in 2024, and then I got to go in 2025. And 2025 I was in a different space. So for me, the conference was even better than it was when I went in 2024. So it's just very interesting to see the evolution of the conferences, but also our experiences, where we are at that point in time when we go in.
Constantly evolves. And for those people curious about perhaps going to Chicago for the Mid-America conference, what are some of the things you're looking forward to there that make you want to be a part of that might also inspire or encourage other people to go as well?
I like how many speakers there are, and I love that question. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are too. There are over 100 speakers, and the reason I think that's really important is because there are multiple rooms going on at one time. So everybody's getting recorded, which is great, and that's always an option. But it leaves it very open to what your interests are. If you go into a conference and there's 25 speakers or 35, it is more limited. Whereas this, now you have over 100 speakers and they're specifically looked at. It's not just anybody can apply. It's yes, anybody can apply, but as the host or as the person that's in charge of the conference, they go through your social media. They go through the things that you're doing to see if you can absolutely teach on this and take what you've learned and bring it into a new light. And I think that's really important because there's an accountability there. And you really want to not just level up for yourself, you want to also level up for your clients, absolutely. But when you go to teach, you want your peers to walk away with value and seeing you as somebody that they can ask their questions to and also learn from. And that takes all of us to a new level. So I'm looking forward to the speakers, and then especially the things that they have planned, which sometimes when we say like connection, we can think LinkedIn really quickly, or like, oh, it was great to connect with you. But the way that they are starting to shift things now for Mid-America, they're having a lunch buffet, which is really cool because like I mentioned at HypnoThoughts Live, they had a breakfast buffet. And now they have a lunch one at this one where you get to spend time and sit down and talk with people, which when you're running from class to class, you don't necessarily get that. Or if it's 5 o'clock in the last day on Friday or Saturday, you're kind of fried and you're like, I need a break. I need to go get some food and I need to process all that I learned. Whereas now it's in the middle of the day. So now you get that time to think about how your morning was. You get your time to talk about other people and see what their modalities are, see what their specialties are. And then there's also a VIP room, which gives it another layer of expertise. And then there's also the events on the evening, along with the keynote speakers. I'm extraordinarily excited about this conference.
Yeah, and I am as well. And, the only US-based conference I've been to is HypnoThoughts for the last 4 years. But Rich's enthusiasm for it, he just seems so excited, and all these kind of things that he's got organized. And I think, when you get, hypnotherapists are interesting people because generally very positive and very, very kind of creative kind of people. And you don't get that in a lot of other conferences. Like in many conferences, it's a little bit kind of territorial and a bit kind of cliquey, but the hypnotists are very kind of friendly, and everyone's eager to share and kind of learn from each other. And I think there's an amazing community element that you don't get if you just kind of connect it online. But I think for anyone listening, I think these conferences are an ability to get lots of learning in a very condensed kind of period, but also just more than learning, like the connection, the understanding, you can kind of get a lot done. So if you are able to get to Chicago, we're going to put a link in the description so you can kind of get tickets. And it takes place, I think, 17th of October, if I'm not mistaken.
Is 24 days and ticking right now,
That's it. Yeah, not far away at all. And Lenora, for anyone interested in learning more about you, either your book, working with you, anything else, like where's the best place they can find out more information on you?
The best place to find out more is driventobebetter.com. That's my website, and all the good stuff is on there, and that's the easiest one to connect with. And I love that you mentioned about connecting with people and that they're eager to share. Practitioners there and therapists there are absolutely eager to share. And that's another beautiful thing. At the end of the class, you get to go up and talk to them if you want. Or you can say, hey, let's meet for lunch. I have a few questions about what you shared. And that's huge, because I think so many people, I used to be like this, like, oh my gosh, what if what will they think of me if I ask the question? And in this community, everybody's like, come with the questions. Let's talk. I love questions. And they literally enjoy answering questions. So they're so eager to hear your questions, which I think is a huge difference.
Amazing. Well, I'm looking forward to it. And if you listen to this and you'd like Lenora, either give us that website address again one more time.
driventobebetter.com.
driventobebetter.com. Check that out. I'll have a link. So if you want to come to Chicago, Lenora's talking, I'm talking, and we're going to have Richard Bandler, Chase Hughes, Rich Guzzi as well, and about 95 other speakers. So it's going to be an amazing place. So check that out. Lenora, thank you so much for giving me your time here. It's a privilege to speak with you, and I will see you in Chicago in a few weeks' time.
Thank you so much for spending time with me, and thank you to your listeners, and I will see you soon.
Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of The Hypnotist. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, I would encourage you, if you haven't already, to hit the subscribe button or follow button to make sure that you're automatically notified of any future episodes that I release. Also, by doing that, it lets the algorithm know that you like this show, and that will put it in front of even more people that might not know that this show exists. So that would be helpful for me. And if you like the stuff that I do, take a moment just to have a look in the show notes or the description, because there's lots of free things that I have to offer, including free hypnosis downloads without the intro or the outro like I'm doing now. So thank you again for joining me on today's episode, and I'll see you again soon for the next one.